This is the Grief Talk Podcast with Vaughn Solis, helping you heal after loss and life's hardest hits. My guest today is Mitch Weisburgh. From 1981 through 2000, Mitch founded and ran Personal Computer Learning Centers of America, training adults in the use of computers and growing the company to over 130 employees. In 2005, he co-founded Academic Business Advisors to help organizations reach and aid more students in U.S. schools and started nonprofit organizations in education such as Games for Ed and EdChat Interactive. Mitch's book, MindShifting, Stop Your Brain from Sabotaging Your Happiness and Success, focuses on techniques to help change people's mindsets that hold them back and instead propel them forward to live happy, productive lives. Since 2018, Mitch has been teaching his mind-shifting concepts that focus on resilience, resourcefulness, and collaboration in the face of any adversity, and I am grateful to welcome him to my show. Welcome, audience, today to Mitch Weisburgh. Mitch, pop in and say hi to my audience.
Hello, everybody, and Vaughn, thank you for having me on the Grief Talk podcast.
You are very welcome. So for my audience, some of you might be wondering why I would have a thought leader and mind shift coach come on the Grief Talk podcast. It's very appropriate. And Mitch, I watched a couple of your podcast interviews on YouTube. And so I got a really good sense, did a little bit of research about what you do. And so I got a very good sense of the kind of work in mind shifting that you're doing. And I can honestly say, I think it's really, really critical, actually, when we're, some of the stuff we're going to talk about today. So no matter if you're bereaved, no matter if you're in a horrible, challenging situation, adversity, just stuck in your life, I think all of these concepts that you work with, Mitch, that we're going to get into in 1 minute, are so powerful. And then you have tons of resources, which we're also going to talk about. So for the audience, to get you to stick around if you want, and also go to chapters that are of special interest to you, we are going to be starting with Mitch's start in this business. We're going to be talking about brain function and survival strategies. We're going to be talking about resolving conflict, resilience, and learning the skills to cope with situations. One of my favorites, our culture of lies. Oh, man. And then we're going to be, rounding this out with support, but in the sense of collaboration that you talk about, Mitch. And I added here a note to myself, it's support and community, but to feel like to embrace it rather than feel threatened by it. Because often in our culture, when we look to other people for help or support, where you're starting a business, whatever you're doing, we have a tendency, especially in survival brain, to look at them as better than us, a threat to us, etc. And then we become very, very hard on ourselves. So, Mitch, let's dive in. And I'm going to start this off. I'm going to ask you to, for our folks, I saw how you got into this when you were talking about prepping, and I don't know if you want to share that here, but prepping a major sort of course. I think it was 5 days or something. No, 2 days, and you had 5 months. Right. And that kind of, if that was your moment where you went, hey, this could be something, I'd love for you to share a little bit about that with my audience. But I also want to read your mission statement. And you say that 5 million people have the abilities to be resourceful, resilient, and collaborative. And your goal is to certainly help as many of those as possible. I don't know where you got your 5 million number from, if you could tell me about that. But anyway, audience, that is what Mitch's goal is to get you out of stuck mentality and thinking and propel you into the life that you really want. So let's start, Mitch, and you tell us how this all started for you.
Yeah, I could. Let me talk about the 5 million, I guess, first. Okay. Because those were two really interesting points that you brought up. Um, so, so, we all look around and we see so many people who are unhappy with their lives. We see this divisiveness. We see major issues that we face in communities, in the nation, in society, in the world, and we're not making any progress towards them. And so, uh, through the studies, and I'll go through, how I got here, through the studies that I've done, and none of these ideas are mine. Uh, you know, if we could get some critical mass of people. There's 8 billion people on the planet. If we can get a critical mass of people to be able to be resourceful so that even when they get stuck, to be able to say, you know something, I realize I'm stuck, but I have a resourcefulness and be able to tap into my own resourcefulness. If we could get those 5 million people also to be resilient, to be able to look at situations and not regard events as success or failure, but as feedback so that they know they can come up with things of what to do next by themselves and with others, and collaborative, so that even when people disagree with them or get in their way or compete with them or try to hurt them or they just don't like those other people, that they find ways to move forward. So if you can just imagine that if we got a critical mass of people who could be resourceful, resilient, and collaborative, then we could change the whole world.
Mhm.
Now, what's a critical mass? And 5 million people it's somewhat of an arbitrary number, but one of the things that I latched onto is that there's uh, I forget the law, but it's somebody's law, is that if you want to change a system, you need the square root of the number of people in the system to change it. So if you're in part of an organization and there's, 50 people in the organization, if you can get 7 people who are really committed to change, you can change that whole institution. You don't need to start off with everybody. You just need the square root of the number of people. Well, with 8 billion people, it's like a few 100,000 is the square root of 8 billion people, and that just seemed to be far too small. So I just said, "You know something? It's not gonna be 3, 400,000. Let's just say we could get 5 million people who could learn how to mind shift to be resourceful, resilient, and collaborative when they needed to be. Wouldn't that allow them, first of all, to live happier and more productive lives, and wouldn't that change the planet?" And so that has become my mission, and that started in really 2018. And I was doing other things, and slowly over the course of the next 3 or 4 years, I shifted to mind shifting as being my total focus.
Yeah.
And so that's where the 5 million people comes from.
Yeah, yeah. I just want to point out really quickly that any of us that get here to what we're doing, the work we're doing, it doesn't start like in with one decision and in, in a very short period of time. Our lives, and particularly those of us who are a little older, we're building on our whole life experiences and what has guided us to our. Well, I'm assuming you'd consider this for sure your purpose work, passion and purpose work. And it's phenomenal. I do want to just say I agree with you. However many people on that 5 million, 8 million, 400,000 that start to shift, there is a ripple effect because we affect those around us and start to immediately change our environment simply by the energy change. Would you agree with that?
100%. And in listening to the way you counsel people and the way you talk about finding your life mission and living with integrity, it all fits together, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, in my case, unfortunately, I had to lose a child to, bring this to the forefront. But it was a foundation I had from my early 20s. And I was already starting to understand bigger concepts. But I like how you put stuff more into some physical things like the brain, that, how how we react with a brain and our thoughts that are controlling, I think, everything we do. And I almost think thoughts come before anything else. But, I had a psychologist actually say that was possibly true, but I don't know if there's proof for what happens first, thoughts or beliefs or whatever, but they all work together. And certainly, which we're now going to talk about, your start and how people, I want you, if you're tuned into this, to really think about what you're thinking. And anything toxic creates more toxicity
Exactly.
and blocks us. So take it away, Mitch. What?
And the toxicity just builds on each other, and yet we have a choice, and if we can be self-aware and realize, "Oh my gosh, this is toxicity. I don't have to react this way," then then, as you said, changes the energy, changes the whole vibration,
Right.
and starts moving us in the direction of, positive movement forward.
I just want to say, I think a key piece that came to me when you just were saying that is that I don't know if a lot of people are aware of their toxic thoughts.
No,
You know,
they don't, because it's like a fish in water. It's like it's because it just seems to be reality, and it's when you start to understand how the brain works that you realize that these are lies, that the
right.
brain is giving you to keep you in a status quo so that you're at lower risk. Theoretically, uh, you're, uh you're not threatened because you're staying in the same place, but actually over time, it's just as threatening or maybe even more threatening because you never have a chance to move out of it until you become aware that it's happening.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I completely know. Okay, because I want to get to all your points. Let me ask you if you want to sort of summarize what brought you to this work. You did say a key point that a lot of what you work in, they're not your ideas necessarily, but they are principles, ideas. They are, things that you've adapted, which is what we do in the world. There is no original thought anymore. So let's like what was the key thing? Was it actually preparing that course for those students, or like what came out of that?
So it all started. I was working in education, and I had become disillusioned in the sense that I got into education because education should be a way to take kids and propel them forward so that they can become fully functional adults.
Yeah.
And I was doing that through technology, and it was like in 15 years, it's like, yes, we have more technology in schools, but are kids better prepared to be adults? And no, they weren't being better prepared. And at that moment in 2017, I'd
Mhm.
gotten an email from a university in Niger, in Africa, saying that they would like me as an ed tech entrepreneur to talk to their undergraduates about education technology. And two things occurred to me. One, education technology in the US is going to be very different from in Niger, which is about the poorest country in the world. And two, um, what kids really needed was not what we were giving them in education. They needed to understand how to be successful, how to look at situations the
Mhm.
way successful people do. So my response back was, I really don't think that an ed tech entrepreneur is going to benefit your undergraduates, but I could talk to them about how successful people understand situations and then keep moving forward even when things don't work out. And so they then got back to me and said, "Well, could you come out here for a semester and can you teach this over, as a course?" And I'm like, "I don't think I don't think I'm going to, move to Niger at this point." Um, but I'll tell you what I'll do is I'll teach a 2-day workshop for your students. And they said, "Can you teach 2 of them?" So it's like, "Sure, I can teach 2 of them." So I agreed that, this is in June ish of 2017. I agreed that in February of 2018, I would fly to Niamey, Niger, and I would teach these 2 2-day workshops to 60 to 70 undergraduates. And then it's like, "Mitch, you idiot. How are you gonna do this? Like, you've never done this before." And it's not like I hadn't taken classes and, yes, uh, I'd spent some time in neurolinguistic programming. I had been through the landmark curriculum. I'd done a lot of other reading, but it was just like I didn't know how to teach this in terms of a 2-day course. So I went on a reading focus and I read like 11 books in psychology and teaching and selling, neuroscience, cognitive science, military strategy, economics, all different ways of making decisions. And what I could see is that, each one of these had their own slice of how you make sense of things and
Mhm.
how you should be making decisions and how you should live your life, but nobody really put it together. And so, um, it occurred to me that there were 3 parts to this. One part being how you can access your most resourceful parts of your brain no matter what. And even when you're not, how you can recover from that. So that was one. And
Mhm.
second, was how do you approach situations? Because we go into situations and we're sure that we have the right answer or we'll get the right answer. And then anything else is wrong. And then all we have to do is do that and it's going to solve our problem. And that never works out. If something is reasonably complicated or complex, uh, nothing we do, the first thing that we do is never going to solve the problem, but it's going to give us information. So how do we approach situations prepared that the first thing that we're going to do isn't going to solve the problem, but can give us great information. So kind of preparing to fail and then recover from that. And then the third part about it was working with other people. That there's always going to be other people, and when we try to steamroll them or reward them or punish them or ignore them, very often it has no effect. Sometimes it has a short-term positive effect, but
Mm.
nothing long-term. And sometimes it just makes the situations worse. But from doing the readings, it's like there's 50, 60 years worth of research about, how you can work with people and move forward, even when you disagree or you dislike them um, or they have some power over you. So I put together this 2-day course on those 3 legs, flew out to Miami in February of 2018, taught the 2 days, and at that point, I call it sense making, not mind shifting, and I said, at the end of the 2 days, it's like, "And that's sense making," and they stood up and cheered.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, this is how I realized that these are skills that as soon as people get them, they realize what's been missing in their lives. And
Mhm.
yet we're not giving those skills to people to be able to take control over their lives. And so that, so since 2018, I've migrated and at this point, well, my mission is to reach a critical mass so that we're not stuck anymore. That people can lead happier lives, and once we have some critical mass of people, then it's just going to propagate. Like the ripples you talked about earlier.
Yeah. And so I would say for the audience, so Mitch, you do have your book, if you'd like to tell folks what it's called. And also, I see you're publishing a volume 3 in November.
Yes. So the first book is Mind Shifting: Stop Your Brain from Sabotaging Your Happiness and Success. That came out in November, December of last year. And then I teach 3 courses, and the second course is on the resilience part of it. But when I was teaching the course on conflict last year, and I taught it twice, the reactions from people about, "Oh my gosh, I had no idea that when I said these things, it was putting people into a fight or flight mode. I had no idea that I myself was going into these fight and flight situations when people disagree with me." It was like, you know something? This is the book that has to be written next. So that book should be book 3. And when I have everything done, it will make more sense, but book 3 will be coming out in November this year,
Oh,
November
that's
2025.
exciting. Let's move next to um, the resourcefulness, tapping into the brain's resourcefulness. I'd like if you could give a more high level description of brain functioning in survival mode. We are not doctors here. Mitch is not a doctor, nor am I. When we do talk about some of these subjects, I refer people in trauma and stuff like that. Go to psychiatrists, go to the professionals. But like you, researching stuff and getting a higher level understanding, I did that in trauma just for myself, for the brain, because we live in survival mode.
Yep.
And I'll be honest, I still live in survival mode a lot of the time, because I want you to explain what you've learned from how the brain, it's very difficult to get out of it, because it's our and what do they call it, an antiquated brain, and it's been very hard to get out of it just over millennia. Let's be fair, because the brain hasn't really developed that much. That from psychiatrists I got. So most of our brain is reptilian and mammalian. So let's share, if you could share what your understanding is of brain functioning in survival mode, how this impacts our inability to tap into our resourcefulness in dealing with struggle and problem solving.
So thank you for, introducing me that way. I've been in situations where people said, "I'm introducing you to Mitch Weisburgh. He's an expert in neuroscience." No, I am not an expert in neuroscience. I'm not a psychologist. I'm just a normal person who's had the time and the curiosity to do, to read what other people a lot smarter than me have put together. It's kind of a simplification or maybe an oversimplification of the brain is to talk about it in 2 different parts. So the survival brain, which scientists call the limbic system. So that started evolving with the first multi-celled organisms that were capable of movement. And that part of the brain evolved to be able to survive. Because obviously, if the organism died, it wasn't going to reproduce and nothing was going to be carried on. So that part of that part of the brain has to be able to take in information really rapidly, come to some decision about what to do, and then focus the entire organism on doing that. And that limbic system, basically, when there's an external stimulus, which could be somebody saying something or us thinking something or something happening, that part of the brain wakes up in like 2/100ths of a second, but really, really fast. And you can think about, again, an oversimplification of even that limbic system of having two parts. One part are the things that we can do without having to think, and the other part is the emotions, which is weighing them. So it's the emotion part is like, oh my gosh, this could be a threat, or this is a threat. And then what should I do? And then the what's called the heuristics, or the things that we could do without thinking. It's like, well, you could do this. No. You could do this. No. Eventually, yes. And in less than a second, that part of the brain generally comes up with something to do. And
Mm.
once it's locked on it, it locks the organism into whatever it is it decides to do. And that tends to choose from really five types of actions. And we all know about fight and flight, or fight, flight, and freeze. Okay. Fighting against somebody, running away, or just freezing like a deer in headlights. And those are really about the first three that develop in humans. And then a fourth one are things that maybe we've learned, okay, or but that we can do without thinking. So we can walk without thinking. We can have a conversation to somebody when we're walking. We can listen to a podcast. We can drive for the most part without thinking. Um, many of the different ways that we converse with people. Like if I say, "How are you?" You're going to probably just say fine without having to you may not be fine, but you'll say fine. You'll do that without thinking.
Yeah.
So those are habits that we've, or things that we're fluent in. That's the fourth type. And then the fifth type is, um, doing what the group or the tribe is doing. And we see that not just in humans, but fish have their schools. Many organisms operate as part of a group. And it's one of the things that has made humans, because it's developed even more from humans, this apex animal on the planet, is that, we can see what other people are doing and we can learn from it. We can pull together as groups. We can build cities. We can build technology. Um, and we're doing that by copying the group, and that group has such a hold on us that even if internally we would never do something, but once we become part of a group, the draw to be part of the group overrides what we would do as individuals, and we operate as part of the group. And when the limbic brain decides on what to do, it's pulling from those five different things and probably coming up with some action in less than a second.
Yeah, I would say I'm sitting here thinking, so because to my knowledge, and maybe you can, comment here whether you know about this, anything, and I follow quite a bit of work of psychiatrists and psychologists that work in trauma, and they often talk about survival brain. I haven't really heard them refer much to four and five. So your habits and I follower mentality. Um, I think that's important not to skip over here because, like I said, so I haven't heard that talked about in relation to limbic system, survival brain. But I think it's key because I think that if we even develop a certain amount of awareness, now I'm talking about the person, so, fight, flight, freeze, right? This is definitely trauma related. But what you're really talking about in the other two parts of the limbic system, I think that's where most people are stuck in four and five.
And even fight, flight, freeze, there a lot of that is habits also, right?
Okay.
Because we've developed this habit that when a certain stimulus comes, we we flee. Okay.
Okay, well, give me an example, Mitch. So, audience members might be watching this and going, yeah, I don't relate to any of that. But if you're saying that the first three, the three F's, are part of habits. So give me just a very basic example, if you could, in say a work situation. I have a lot of younger people that watch this podcast, and in the millennial and a little younger, and I would wager a lot of those are still having to work and not very happy at jobs and things like that, not happy where their lives are going. So their brain in habits are making a snap decision, and not even giving themselves necessarily a chance to think outside the box, to take a risk, all of what we're going to talk about in your language. So could you just give me an example so they could think about themselves? Oh yeah, I'm doing this. I'm fighting. I'm fighting. I'm fleeing. I'm freezing.
So when those actions are taken really from a standpoint of fear, it becomes, your limbic behavior. As an example, somebody asks you to do something. Like it could be somebody that you're in a relationship with asks you to do something. And when you have this story, like, if I don't do this, this person isn't going to like me, or this person isn't going to respect me. So I better do this. When really, if you were fully resourceful, you might think of, well, something, maybe there's something else I could do. Maybe I need to set boundaries, or there's other ways of thinking about it. But
Mhm.
when you're doing it and you're saying, I have to do this because if I don't, I lose my job, or if I don't, I might lose my relationship, or this person isn't going to like me, or I'm always the one, and you're feeling like, oh, and I'm always the one, I'm the doormat. I'm always pleasing people. Nobody's ever doing it for me, but "Ah, I guess I have to do it one more time." Okay, so that's one. Another one is when somebody criticizes us. Okay, so they may not phrase it as well as they could have, but when somebody criticizes us, very often we go into this, they're attacking me. Okay, they're saying I'm not very good, and then we go and attack back.
Yeah.
Um, when we try to help somebody out, and they respond in an angry manner because their limbic system has reacted that we're threatening them, and then when we respond back to them angry, like, I'm just trying to help, what's the matter with you, can't you take advice? Those are all limbic reactions.
Yeah, I get it now. Okay, I get it. I get it. So interesting. And I'll wager it happens to all of us.
Oh, can I give one more example?
Yes.
Okay, and the other example is, and this one actually tends to shock people when they first hear about it, but,
Okay.
the other example is whenever you are absolutely positive about something, it's almost always a limbic reaction, okay? Because in this world, nothing is ever 100% sure. And so if you are absolutely sure that, I don't let me take a controversial one. If you are absolutely sure that it's only through gun control that we're gonna provide violence, okay?
Okay.
That's a limbic reaction. You're not really thinking about it. Gun control is one of the things that we could do to control violence, but it's not the only thing that we could do. But when you're 100% sure that that's what we need to do, that's a limbic reaction. That doesn't mean that it's wrong, but it just means that it's a limbic reaction. It's not coming from our prefrontal cortex. It's not coming from our resourceful parts of the brain.
Okay, I do get it, and I'm thinking that we probably have a limbic reaction to everything, every moment in our life, every day, because we're always thinking and those in the survival brain, you're always on alert, but we're all in survival brain unless we can refine and tap into what you're referring to here, Mitch, as our resourcefulness, which if I were to just, bring it right down, would be uh, to have a more thoughtful approach to life in all areas.
Right.
I
Critical
mean,
thinking,
critical thinking.
creativity, empathy, the ability to align to our values,
Yeah.
the ability to, to work at things without becoming attached to the results, to be able to take in feedback. All of those are things that are part of executive function.
Yeah.
Those are all parts of our resourceful brain. Say, again, for simplicity's sake, our prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that's right up here.
Yeah.
That part of the brain wakes up in 2 to 3 seconds after a stimulus,
Still slower than the limbic.
right?
So this is why, and I don't want to skim over this, but just to sort of, again, sort of recapitulate what you've said, is that we react all day long. And even if we don't verbally say something to our partner, to our boss, to our teammate, to our friend, and I love the example about you saying, talking about someone asking you to do something. How many of us say yes when we really mean no?
Or we want to say no, right?
Or we want to say for even family, because we're pressured, we're busy, we're whatever. So a lot of us live out of obligation and so on. So it's so important. So to I don't want to say dumb the language down, but to simplify the language is to just not like, I think if you could take away, audience, that the prefrontal cortex where you have that's the gateway to resourcefulness, right? To be thoughtful and intentional about how you're going to do anything in your life, including thinking about yourself, managing your day, like even breaking it into segments instead of rushing into the limbic response, is to give yourself that extra 2 or 3 seconds or longer
Oh, yeah. Yep.
to tap in, slow down, tap in. Because isn't that the only way you can really tap into that resourcefulness, is obviously understanding what you're trying to tap into, the prefrontal but cortex, but also that you need a little time to do it.
You need the time, and you can't fight your limbic system. You
Okay,
have
that's
to come up with other ways of calming it down or tapping into your resourcefulness. For example, okay, if you go to do something we see it in others, it's harder to see in ourselves.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
when you say, "I can't do this,"
Mm-hmm.
okay, then, some of us, people say, "Well, just yes, you can, or show some grit, show some persistence." That may work a little bit,
Mm.
it may work for a very short period of time, but it takes a tremendous amount of energy and it doesn't really last. And so what we need to be able to do is kind of trick our brains to so that the limbic system doesn't fight against the things that we really want to do. Um and there's, I maintain there's 3 things that we ourselves can do, and then there's a 4th thing that we can do to
What's
be
that?
able to tap into the resourcefulness.
Yeah.
The first thing is through self-awareness. It's like, "Oh my gosh, I'm in limbic mode." You know? "Oh my gosh, I'm in fight mode. Oh my gosh, there I go, see, I can't do something again." You know, and, to be sometimes that's just enough. Like if if I'm very often disagreeing with somebody, or I'm procrastinating, or I'm in limbic mode, and I'm just saying, something, I'm just in limbic mode. Sometimes it's like, "Ha, okay, boom," and then and that's it. It's gone. It's like that's all that's needed. Sometimes it's through some type of a positive self-talk, and the positive self-talk is not like, "Yes, yes, I can do that." The real positive self-talk that works is positive self-talk that opens up possibilities. So if I say I can't, if I have this voice saying I can't, coming back and saying I can this just causes the fight. But coming back and saying, perhaps I can.
Perhaps.
Right, perhaps I can, you know, or I can't right now, maybe I can, or saying, I know that I can't do this, but if I could do it, what might I do first? And so you're kind of fooling yourself, and that's just with one example of the "I can't," but it also, like, when this person is wrong, you can, similar things for that, um, or I'm feeling depressed again. It's like,
Mhm.
maybe like, what saying I'm feeling really depressed, what am I grateful for?
Ah.
Okay?
Okay.
Okay. Is it's like it's coming at it from a different angle. And sometimes that positive self-talk will work. What again, you start with self-awareness and then the positive self-talk. And the third thing that we can do is some type of distraction. Okay. And distraction, there's so many different, meditation is a type of distraction, or mindfulness is a type of distraction. You had a person on a while back who's talked about dancing. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, it's hard to be depressed when you're dancing, right?
Oh my gosh, that's Megan Bloom, folks, and she was on a couple episodes ago, and I don't think I've met a happier person, and she's genuinely happy because she dances.
Yep. So dancing for some people, it's art. Taking a walk, especially taking a walk in nature,
Mm-hmm.
thinking of things that you're grateful for, but
Mm-hmm.
just distraction will tend to calm down that limbic system so that then you can have access to your resourcefulness, and
Yeah.
come up with ways of being of the critical thinking, creativity, empathy, or just say like you're in an argument with somebody and you're disagreeing with them, and you turn it around and say, you know something, if my purpose right now were only to connect with this person, I don't have to agree with them,
Yeah.
but I just want to connect with them
Yes.
person to person, what would I say to connect with them? Now, chances are the first thing that you try isn't going to be successful because they're riled up already. And your tendency was when they come back to you and attack you, even though you've made an effort, your tendency is going to go back to fight or flight. But if you could say to yourself, let me make a game of it. Let me see if I could come up with 10 empathetic things to say to them before I get angry. I'll bet you I can wear them down.
And if 10's too many, just try 3 to 5.
5, right,
Yeah.
and because we have, as I said, we have this tremendous pressure to be part of a group that works both ways. Part of the group is when they're angry at us, we're gonna get angry at them, but the other side of it is if they're angry with us, we've decided that we're gonna be empathetic. Eventually, their mirror neurons are gonna become empathetic also.
Yeah, yeah, because the brain, I'm thinking of people in relationships right now. That's all of us because we're in relationships in some way, shape, or form all day long. Um, so um, we're going to talk about conflict next, but I just wanted to point out two things. I must remember relationships, but the self-talk piece, that's really important, and I'm taking that away of one of many things in this conversation, Mitch. But when you talked about staying away from to counter the limbic system, that's trying to fight us changing our mind about thinking, mind shifting. And so you gave the example, I can't, and then you said, and to say I can isn't going to work. I guess that feels too threatening. But the minute you said, try, perhaps I can, I felt my own system just calm right down.
That's the first exercise that I do in the classes. Before I go into the brain or anything, one of the very first exercises is to have first to volunteer, and then I have people pair up in twos and try it, is, the person comes up on Zoom or whatever, and it's like, well, okay, come up with something that you know that you can't do that you really want to do. Um, and is it like you have a voice inside of you saying, I can't, or is it a feeling, or what is it like? And eventually it comes out that it's just like a voice saying, I can't. And then it's like, when you hear that voice, this time, just answer it. Perhaps I can. And what happens? And I would say more than 3/4 of the people, it's like you can see their whole body just relax after that. And it's like, "What? I just feel lighter," because your brain can't help at that point to start coming up with ways that perhaps you can. Maybe you have to ask somebody else. Maybe you have to open a book. Maybe it's gonna take a while. But and it may be, there's certain things that we'll never be able to do, but the pressure of "I can't" just goes away for most people.
And I would invite the audience right now, because I just did it. Think about something you think you cannot do or have, right? Anything, but it's I can't, whatever. and sit with that for a second, and then say, perhaps I can. Sit with that. I invite you. That is like, I just felt my whole body change, um, because I think that when we are in a I can't mode, for even one thing through our day, but most of us who are living, for anyone who's living with something they haven't yet achieved and really want, I think that well, I'll ask you, does that sort of stay humming in the background of the limbic system, kind of remembers and feeds that? Yeah, I remember they say they can't do this or can't have this or whatever the toxicity is. You say you want to change the thinking that holds people back. So I guess my question is anything holding us back is an I can't automatically. So, does our limbic system keep us in that conscious and subconscious state of thinking all the time? You think so?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And it's always going to come back, and no matter how many times you defeat it, there'll always be the next thing that it comes back to haunt you. But when you do defeat it, it feels so good. It's like, "Oh my gosh, I was in limbic mode and I was able to overcome it this time." There's I tell people there's really 2 ways that we can improve our reactions. One is to build up our ability to be self-aware
Yeah.
and to recognize we're in limbic. And the other is that, that fourth area of the limbic system is habits. So the more good habits we learn that we can draw on, the better we become at making these fast decisions. So that if we become really good at asking ourselves or saying to ourselves, perhaps I can, then the next time we can't do something, it's like, perhaps I can. Or an alternative is when we start thinking about, something, if I think about the things I am most proud of that I've done in my life, every single one, and I think of, let's say, 5 things. Every single one of them at some point, I felt anxious. I felt afraid. I felt I couldn't do it. And in each time, I was able to overcome that and still do it. And look what happened. And when we can think about that, then the next time we get into a situation where we start getting, "Oh, I'll never be able to do this. I knew I shouldn't have tried it." It's like, well, wait a minute. You know something? Let me go back to the expression I use, emotional cookie jar, and let me think back to these 5 things. You know something? I felt this before, and this feeling of being anxious, all it is letting me know that I'm in a position where I'm starting to grow. And all I have to do is persist, and you know something? I'm gonna be successful, and then I'm gonna have a 6th thing that I'm really proud of that I was able to accomplish.
That's amazing. Awesome. 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 We could end the episode right there, and you've given, the audience
So much positivity.
positivity to think about.
And we all have that within us. It's not
I
like
know.
I didn't it's not like, "Oh, geez, this is coming from me." No, this is not coming from me. This is power that we all have
Yes.
in ourselves, in our brain and our body.
So I'm going to suggest here then the key. I'm going to ask you, is the key to getting to that, perhaps I can, tapping into the limbic system in everything we've just talked about, being able to recognize you're in limbic mode, you're in limbic system mode, number one, and I need it and I want to change this. So perhaps I can. Is it that simple?
It really well,
When I say that, you know what I mean. There's not a bunch of complicated steps to tap into recognizing, i.e., being self aware, folks, that you're in limbic system mode in one of the 5 ways.
I will say also that I said that there's 3 things that we could do ourselves. One is the self-awareness, 2 is the positives, the self-talk that opens us up, and 3 is the distraction, whether it's meditation or dancing or athletics or something that allows us to decrease the stress hormones that are raging in our brains so that we can tap into our resourceful brain. But the fourth thing is that sometimes you just need somebody else. Need somebody else who also understands these things to be able to talk to you. Not somebody who tells you, yes, you can, or somebody who mansplains something to you. Like you don't need that. You just need somebody who can help you tamp down your limbic reactions so that you can be resourceful. And just it happened with me fairly recently where, I realized I was in limbic mode. I tried talking to myself. I tried like meditation, nothing was working. And so, your kids are adults, my kids are adults also. I called my son,
Yeah.
and it was just like, "So Herbie, I'm really upset. He's Dad, you wrote the book. Come on." Oh, he says, "Okay, fine." And he opens up the book and he says, "I'm just gonna go through one of the things in the book." And you just sometimes need somebody else that voice in your ear to just calm you down so that you can be resourceful.
Yeah, I love what I remember you talking a little bit about that, and um so I was just going to say there, maybe sometimes calling our adult children isn't what we want to do when they're like, "Dad, you wrote the book," instead of, "I'm listening, tell me more.
Right, right, yeah.
Tell me more, Mitch." Okay, so for that I call my sister.
Yeah, it does, you're right. I just,
I just had to point that out. It's so funny. It's so How old's your son?
he's 39.
Okay, okay. Anyway, so but someone who'll listen and just be there for us, because you've made a key point there too. I don't want to just skim over. These four methods of the self-awareness, positive self-talk, distraction, make that really good distraction, not your phone, folks, and support. Sometimes, like you just said, Mitch, the first three just don't work. And if we're in such a state of anxiousness, or, we've really convinced ourselves the limbic system has won, let's just put it that way. I am going to remember to remind myself when that happens, I am in limbic system mode. And that, for me, that's enough to make me self-aware. So we don't have time today, Mitch, to talk about becoming self-aware, but I would point folks at this stage to go to Mitch's website. Mitch, what's the name of your website?
Mindshiftingwithmitch.com. And there's a link from there also to my newsletter, which is all mindshiftingwithmitch.blog, but
Yeah.
mindshiftingwithmitch.com, and there's a link to the book. There's a description of some of these techniques.
Yeah, because you've got so much stuff that you specifically work in this area, but get some help. Surround yourself with positive resources. Do something positive every day. Try and, calm yourself down somehow. And over time, you learn how to become self-aware. But it's really great that you're mentioning you can have decades of being self-aware, but you're still not going to win over the limbic system entirely, You never will, right?
It's always temporary. Right.
Yeah, okay, good. Thank you. I'm going to take that away. Okay, Mitch, let's go quickly to I wanted to talk about the at least one or two different styles of dealing with conflict, because a lot of people do that, and sort of tie in solution-oriented thinking. If you could give a couple of tips about that, that'd be awesome.
I think one of the things about conflict is that when we're in conflict, very often we're in limbic fight or flight mode. And so if we expect to be able to constructively deal with conflict, the first thing that we have to do is understand that we need to be in resourceful mode. And so to be able to be, again, self-aware, and that's why the resourceful course or the resourceful book comes first, is we have to be aware of how to first calm ourselves down and be in resourceful mode, and then we can deal with the conflict. Because as long as we're in fight or flight mode, the mirror neurons of the other person are just going to escalate, and it's going to eventually be that it's a win-lose situation. And even if we win, the other person is going to have resentment, and yeah, and they're going to find ways to sabotage the results if they can. But when we're in resourceful mode, we can also very often get them into resourceful mode as well. So that's first is to get into resourceful mode. Second, I would say is to understand um, that there are 5 different ways of dealing with conflict. And so when you understand and you can look them up on the internet, these aren't
Okay.
from me, okay?
Okay.
Just the 5 ways of dealing with conflict,
Yeah.
and there's an instrument that you can take that will, it takes it's well, there's 2. The original one, it costs, I think, $50. It takes 5 minutes. Um, and then there's an organization called Institute of Peace or instituteofpeace.org,
Mm.
and they have virtually the same instrument, and it's free,
Cool.
and it also takes about 5 minutes, and it gives you background into these 5 different modes, and I can summarize them in a second. And it also tells you which ones you tend to go to most often. And one of the keys to being in to resolving conflicts is to, first of all, understand the 5 and use them when appropriate. And second of all, using them in resourceful mode, not using them in fight or flight mode. So,
Oh, yeah, that's key. Say that again, Mitch. That's key.
so to use them in resourceful mode,
Yes.
okay, so that you yourself are like, you're curious, you're not angry, okay? You're
Yeah.
inquisitive, you're not judgmental, okay? So when you're inquisitive and you're exploratory, instead of being judgmental and angry, you're going to be able to use those 5 styles a lot more effectively for much better long-term results.
Right. Without going into detail in each one, can you itemize them?
Yeah. So there's compete, which is basically, I'm going to tell you what to do, and I don't really care what your response is. I'm expecting you to just do it, and so first is compete. Second is accommodate. Okay, so a compete always wants the other person to be accommodate. So accommodate means I'm gonna do whatever you tell me to do. I'm gonna do. Uh, and it's not like accommodate is bad, or it's not necessarily that compete is bad. There's times to use both, but to accommodate, you're doing what the other person or the other side is telling you to do.
Yeah.
A third one is avoid. Okay, just not dealing with it, procrastinating it. It's like, whatever, and you walking away or something like that. And there's times to do that as well. Well, I could I could
Yeah.
go into these for hours, but so that's the third one.
Yeah.
And then the fourth and the fifth one are words that in English we very often think of as synonyms, but they're not. Okay. There's there's collaborate and there's compromise.
Compromise. Yeah.
Okay. So compromise and collaborate, and we sometimes think of them as similarities, but compromise means that neither one of us is fully satisfied, but I'll give you these points and you give me those points. So we're splitting the pie up. Collaborate is, something, you want this and I want this. Let's see if we can come up with something that meets both of our needs.
Yes. Okay. I love
Okay.
that. Right.
So collaborate is the one that it's impossible to do when you're in fight or flight mode. But the other 4 you could either use from your limbic mode or you could use from your resourceful mode. And I'll give it an example with compete. I mean, dealing with a child and it's the child's bedtime, and you say, it's your bedtime, go to bed right now. And the child gets angry and it's like, don't give me any lip. Just, I told you to go to bed. You go to bed right now. Come on.
Yeah.
And so you're in limbic mode as you're doing that, but you're, you're making your ideas, your demands known, and you're expecting the other person to do it. Whereas in using compete mode from a resourceful standpoint, it's like, it's your bedtime, you have to go to bed. And of course the child is going to protest. They're watching TV, they're doing something that they really like. And from a resourceful standpoint, it's, something, you have every right to be angry. And whether you're angry or not, I still love you.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and if I were in your position and I really wanted to do this, I would be angry too. It happens to be as your parent, it's my job to do what I think is healthy for you. So it is your bedtime and you do have to go to bed. Now, the child is probably still going to be angry with you. Okay. Is that saying that is not going to
Yeah.
necessarily calm them down. But over time, as the child becomes more respectful and at a deep level they're understanding that this is not coming from anger, but sometimes you have to lay the law down and they have to obey.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just, I want to move on to culture of lies quickly here, but I did want to point out and just clarify. Earlier, you said that, and actually, I felt I understood it in the sense of good competition. But we were talking a little earlier about these mechanisms and self-awareness, and also like you can't do a lot of this stuff without self-awareness, certainly not collaborate without self-awareness. And you were talking about what we do in self-awareness, sort of mirrors the neurons for the person we might be in conflict with, or whatever we're trying to do. But my question, I thought then, and my question now is, what would trigger a person to become self-aware who doesn't ever really think about it?
Right. So, uh, one caveat that I'll say is we can never change another person, and another person can't change us. So, change comes from within, period. Now, we can make conditions so it's more likely that the other person can access their abilities to change. But it's not like a cause, like we're going to do this and this other person is going to change. We're going to do this so the other person has a greater possibility of change, but if they're not ready to make the change, they're just not going to be ready to make the change. Now, having said that, when we become self-aware and we're able to go into a resourceful state, we're self-regulating.
Yes.
When we look at another person and we understand that they're not able to self-regulate, we can be a co-regulator with them.
Okay.
Now, it still isn't 100, they end up having to change if they're gonna change, but we can help them by prompting them um, with questions, with curiosity, and
Yeah.
probably
Yeah.
one of the best mechanisms for doing that is I'm gonna say technique, but it's not really a technique, but it's a methodology called motivational interviewing that was developed by, social workers to help people get over really risky behavior, like, drugs, self-harm,
Wow.
um, and so that's now been I can't say expanded because the core of it is always the same,
Yeah.
but the uses of it have been expanded, and it's used with adults, it's used with teens, it's used with kids as young as, say, 8 years old. Before then, their brains probably aren't developed enough to be able to, um, have it done to them. You can use some of the techniques and you can water them down a little bit. But, motivational interviewing, you can, it's another thing you can look up on the internet. It's going to be, there's a whole chapter on it in the conflict and collaboration book that's coming out in November.
It sounds like it's kind of rooted in intentional behavior
Yep.
to the extent that someone can understand their intentions. Um, but maybe a kid as young as 8 knows right from wrong, or, I'm just in black and white intentions. Yeah, that's it. That's super interesting. We're not covering that here, but that is super interesting.
It really is because the whole purpose of motivational interviewing is not to change another person, but to have another person be able to walk through themselves where they're ambivalent about something. Because
Mhm.
probably what they're doing is they're getting some type of a short-term reward, but not meeting their long-term rewards and getting them to talk about what they really want to do and come to their own decisions.
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking here of relationships. I'm thinking here where one partner grows and another doesn't. I'm thinking here of people who feel stagnant in their life and using that to question their own motivation and intentions, what you want out of life, things like that. So that is definitely something worth thinking about, folks, and applying to your life. In many, many, many ways. What's your intention? What do you want out of this? And, I hate to say this, but I do believe a majority of the billions in the world are followers. And, in their, like, let me rephrase that, give into their limbic system in one way or another.
Yep.
But following was one of the things, group mentality. And that segues beautifully into what I want to actually talk about briefly here is the culture of lies we live in. And hence tell ourselves and keep us in this prisoner state of I'm just going to say the limbic state, the limbic system mode. I love that. I mean, I knew about that, but it's fun to think about it, that I'm in limbic system mode. It's kind of red alert, red alert, red alert.
To be.
Have fun with it, folks, and because it lightens it, and we don't have to be so hard on ourselves that we're not perfect yet, or whatever we're telling ourselves we need to be, all of which we don't believe, by the way. So let's talk briefly about culture of lies. And you did have a little story I know that you tell about your son, I believe, giving notice from a job, and an international student you had. And I loved that story, and it stuck with me. If you want to share it briefly with our audience, because this is such a good example. Okay.
Sure. And so this occurred. First of all, we've had a lot of exchange students. We've had over 12 exchange students who've lived with us for somewhere between 6 months and a year, plus another dozen or so who've lived with us for shorter term.
Wow.
And so our second exchange student was from China, and she's now living in the U.S.
Yeah.
And she was now back in the U.S. going to college when my son graduated from college.
Okay.
And we picked him up, went to his graduation, picked him up, and we're in the car coming back. And I'm like, so Herbie, now that you're finished with college, what are you thinking of doing? So he says, I think I'll be really good in international business. And so from the back seat, Eva, who's the Chinese exchange student, yeah,
Yeah.
says, well, what makes you think that you'll be good in international business? And he says, oh, yeah, I've gone to school in Mexico. I've gone to school in the United Kingdom. I've gone to school in Israel. I speak a couple languages. I think I would be really good. I could work for an international firm. So she says, well, okay, let me check with you. She says, let's say that you were working in China and you got a great job offer and you decided to take it. What would you tell your boss? I would say, thank you for everything you've done with me. I've really learned a lot at this job. You've been a fantastic boss. I had this opportunity that I can't turn down. I wasn't looking for anything. It just came to me. And what kind of notice do you need? So I said, so Eva, what would you tell your boss? And she says, oh, I would go to my boss and I say, I'm sorry, my mother is really sick. I have to quit my job and I have to take care of my mother. And Herbie says, but that's a lie. And so Eva says, but what you told is a lie also. You're not always going to remember what this boss did for you. This boss didn't do everything, go out of her way to train you. You were actually looking for a job, something that just didn't fall in. She says, if you're going to be, in Chinese culture, your boss is basically your parent. And if you're saying you have a better offer, it's saying you didn't do a good enough job as a parent.
Oh, interesting.
So Herbie says, but they know that you're lying. He says, yes, they know that I'm lying, but they know that I'm playing into what they need to hear. And your boss knows that you're lying also. They know that they didn't do a great job mentoring you.
Yeah.
They know that they didn't give you these promotions, that they could have done that you were probably looking for a job. They know but if you're going to be an international business, you have to understand the lies of the culture of where you're working.
And
If you're gonna work in
That's
China, you have to understand our lies.
That's exactly what this would be an episode all on its own, Mitch. Understand the lies of the culture you're living in. And why that hit me was because, with my nod to the grief audience here, holy smoly, do we have to live a life of lies from certain types of bereavement. But you actually bring it out. We're living lies in every area of our life culturally, pretty much. So I don't have to feel so bad. It's just another area that we all lie to ourselves and to each other. And your very first, example of, our automatic responses, and you said, I might ask you, how are you, Vaughn? And I'll respond, fine. I might even respond, great, because I'm not going to tell you how I really am. That's reserved for just my inner circle of family, or just myself even. And so I'm using that as an example. I am doing fairly well, thank you. but I just, how do we, and this as we come to the top of the hour, Mitch, ties into failure and what we, so I really want to tap into just any sort of wisdoms you want to share on, they throw this word around, authentic, and it used to be a wonderful word 5 years ago. Now it's not worth the paper it's written on. So I call it genuineness, because that one they're not using really too much yet. But this idea of actually being true to ourselves, and and I think that will impact or influence how we think about an alternative to our failures. If you just want to speak to that a little bit.
Very often when we're regarding something as a failure and we're internalizing it as a failure and that we're a failure,
Mhm.
that really means that we are in limbic mode. So I would say the first thing to do is to realize that you're in limbic mode. Maybe open yourself up, but probably you need to do something like a distraction, like breath work, mindfulness around your breath, go for a walk so that your limbic system is calmed down.
Oh,
Once your limbic system is calmed down, uh, I think you kind of ask yourself, you ask your kind of your intuition, like, what do I really want here? Here's my situation right now. Given that, what do
mm,
I want to happen next? And then, given what I want to happen next, the next thing that I say that people should ask themselves is, now go to your heart and your gut.
yeah.
How does that feel? And when what you want to hear happen next comes together with what your heart and your gut are telling you,
Mhm.
that's your path.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And from there, I think things become clearer. But it's like, first, calm down your limbic reactions,
Yeah.
then use your intuition, your mind, like, what do I really want to happen here? How does that feel? What does my heart say? What does my gut say? And then that's if the gut, your heart and your gut say, something that doesn't feel right, it's like, so I wonder what I could change about that to make it so it would feel right. And you'll come up
Oh,
with something, and then you come back to your heart and your gut. Well, how does that feel? So you eventually, through some iterative process, come up with whatever that thing happens to be.
mhm.
And I think a kind of a story about that was this friend of mine who's a grief counselor.
Mm-hmm.
And and that can be really rough work.
Yeah.
And so she formed a group with two other grief counselors for them to support each other. And that group did great for a year or two. But she missed the meeting. She didn't prepare for the next meeting. And, and internally she was going through this, like, well, I should come to the meetings. And then, like, internally it was like, Yeah, that's just that's why you'll never succeed because whenever you stick with things even when they're not working, you never know when to change. So it's like, well, okay, well maybe I'll just stop the group, and then internally it's like,
Oh,
no, 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 of course you never stick with things. That's why you'll never be successful. Nobody likes you because they can't rely on you. It's like, well, maybe I should tell them that I'm feeling this way, and then it comes back and say, yeah, yeah, you never make a decision. That's you all over again. Come on, just make it. Whatever she came up with, her internal voices were just beating her up, right? And that's what we all do, right? So then she said, you know something? This is my limbic system really attacking me. And she quieted down and she happened to be using breath work, like being very conscious of her breath for about 10 minutes, and that calmed down. And then she asked herself what she really wanted to do. And what came up with was she was going to tell the group that this group really helped her for a time period, but now it seems like it had played out and it was time to end. And now she was really sure of it, and when her limbic system started attacking her again, as it always does, she says, I know what I wanna do. You warned me. I don't have to listen to you anymore. We're done. Okay? And kinda stop bothering me, limbic system. I don't need this anymore." And then it turns out when she talked to her friends about it, they were like, "You know something? We had the same feeling and we didn't know what to do about it, but you're really right. The group was great for a year and a half. Now it's played out and we can we don't if we need each other again, we know who to call." So it's just
No,
like the thinking.
it's so important. So the culture of lies feeds into everything, Mitch, that you've just talked about, what we tell ourselves, what we, prevent ourselves from doing, believing that we can do, what we tell ourselves that we should be doing, and right now, there's so much pressure and crap coming from AI generated stuff and how to succeed and let me help you do this and let me help you do that. And it's like, stop. You have to stop the noise around us. We all have to stop. And as you say, I also believe in heart gut instinct. And I've always said the heart never lies. And I will just say one last thing for those of us that try, and maybe Mitch, you do this too, put something on the list that we want to go after and we're not ready for it, or we truly don't want to do it, but we think we should do it for whatever reason. And just to stop, take a beat, and do what you're saying, Mitch. Distract. Often when you use the word distraction, a lot of us can think of it in terms of negative terms, but these are beautiful distractions, a walk in nature and things like that. But more to the point, calm your limbic system, folks, and take some time to really tap into your own truth. And I've always believed that if we can just be truthful about who we are, our stories, and then be brave enough to share them, that can start to displace some of this, cultural lying that is shaping so much of what we think we need to do and how we need to behave and our lack of connection. Mitch,
And Don, I will say, you said it beautifully on another one of your sessions. So the three things, understanding ourselves at a deeply personal level, okay? Having the skills to maneuver this world as a deeply emotional creature and staying committed to nailing down what we came here to do. Those are the three things.
yeah, that's nice. And
Was from you.
well,
It was absolutely beautiful. That's why it's like, wow.
that's funny. I'll write that down that I said that because, often when I write stuff or do a coaching session, a lot of my stuff comes from the angels and whatever, and I write it, record it, and then, and I do live it. But what you've made very helpful for me to understand today, Mitch, is that we do live in our limbic system. We do live in this brain that's always telling us, that may or may not have been, probably is conditioned from our earliest years too, right?
Mhm.
right?
And so we have a lot of crap, people, that we have to overcome in our life, depending what we've been through, but certainly what we're subjected to on a near daily basis. And you have to have the courage to weed it out and say no and stop following. Ugh.
Right.
How can you tell that's where I am at in my life?
We all are. We all are.
And I don't mind saying it. I don't want to be the biggest, best podcast or business person or anything. I just want to do what I do comfortably and with my life balanced and as fulfilled and content as I can be. So all the things that you want in your 5 million critical mass. I'm one. And
Yeah,
so
good.
you got me, Mitch. Is there anything else that you'd like to leave the audience with that I may not have addressed?
Well, I liked another thing that you said on another episode, which is own your power.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what I'd like to leave people with is like own your power.
Yeah, because I live my life like that. My first book was all about transforming pain into personal power, divine healing, and it did well for a while. And then it just kind of, was sitting on the back shelves. And here's a little story. I had that book. I'm in Canada, all across Canada in bookstores in the major. It would be like your Barnes and Noble, called Chapters. And do you know that scared the bejesus out of me? And eventually it left the bookstore. I just wasn't ready. I was not ready, and I did not know what I wanted to become in my bereavement. And I'm now bereaved 20 years, and I have to be honest, I still don't know kind of what I want to become. So I'm just sort of happy with who I am today, and take all the pressure off who we want to become, folks, and just embrace who you are today. And all the doors just keep opening, don't they, Mitch?
They really do. Yes.
All right. So please say your website once again. I know you have tons of resources. Where people can find you, Mitch. I am going to have the link in the show notes.
Oh, thank you. MindShiftingWithMitch.com.
MindShiftingWithMitch.com. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and the work that you do, Mitch. I'm going to follow what you're up to, and you've been just so helpful for me on a personal note today.
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. So thank you for coming on and sharing with my audience as well. Thank you.
And goodbye.